Hello, this is Dr. Grande. Today I will analyze the case of Lily and Jack Sullivan. First, I'll look at the background of this case, move to the timeline of the incident, then offer my analysis. Lily and Jack Sullivan lived in Nova Scotia. In 2025, Lily was 6 years old and Jack was 4 years old. Their mother, Malaya Brooks Murray, also had a younger daughter named Meadow. According to family members, the biological father of the children had no contact with them. In 2023, the family moved in with Malaya's lover, Daniel Martell. He had a modular home on Gairloch Road in Lansdowne, 16 miles south of New Glasgow. Malaya was a stay-at-home mom, and Daniel worked at a local sawmill. Daniel referred to himself as the stepfather of Lily and Jack. Now moving to the timeline of the incident. On Friday, May 2, 2025, at about 10 a.m., Malaya called 911 and indicated that Lily and Jack were missing from the home where the family lived. She woke up that morning to the sound of the children playing in the next room. She fell back asleep for a few minutes. When she woke up, the children were gone. Here is what the police found during the course of their investigation. The family home is surrounded by dense forest. The backyard of the home has a dilapidated fence. In addition to the modular home, there were 2 sheds and an old recreational vehicle on the property. Based on photographs, the RV does not appear to be in working condition. Reportedly, Daniel's mother lived in the RV along with multiple cats and 1 dog. Lily and Jack attended school on Tuesday, April 29, 2025, 3 days before they went missing. Their school was called Salt Springs Elementary. It was located 11 miles from the home. There was no school on Wednesday, April 30. Their mother kept them home on Thursday, May 1 and Friday, May 2 because Lily had a cough. Due to a slowdown at the sawmill where Daniel worked, he was home on the Friday the children went missing. The authorities conducted a massive search of the area, deploying over 160 rescue personnel, as well as helicopters, drones, and dog teams. They did not find Lily or Jack. On May 4, 2025, Daniel shared his thoughts with the media. He said that on the morning of the disappearance, Lily came into the bedroom a few times as Jack was playing in the kitchen. At least that's probably where Jack was. Daniel believed the children opened the sliding door in the back of the modular home and exited. Their boots were found next to that door. Daniel assumed the children left the property through the back fence. When he realized the children were gone, he climbed into his vehicle and drove around the area, but he had no success. About 10 minutes later, he returned home and searched on foot. Once again, he did not find anything. On May 5, the police stated that they did not find any evidence of an abduction. They believed that Lily and Jack wandered away from their home. On May 7, 2025, the police asked Daniel to turn over his cell phone. Daniel indicated that he complied with the request. This same day, the police scaled back the search operation. They had thoroughly searched a 2.1 square mile area without success. At the time I'm making this video, Lily and Jack Sullivan remain missing. The police continue to investigate this disappearance. Now moving to my analysis. Here are my thoughts on a few areas that stood out to me in this case. Item number 1. Based on information which has been made available about the disappearance of Lily and Jack, some people suspect foul play. They don't buy the story about the children wandering into the woods. The authorities asked the public to refrain from jumping to conclusions or sharing unverified information. They are worried this could complicate the effort to find the children. If Lily and Jack did wander into the forest, it is very unlikely they are still alive. This may explain why the police have scaled back the search effort. It is a body recovery mission at this point. The police indicated that there is no evidence of an abduction, but there is no way to know if they are telling the truth. It's possible they have found evidence, but don't want to give away information out of fear of jeopardizing the investigation. Item number 2, Lansdowne, where the children lived, is a rural area of Nova Scotia. Only about 100 people live there. Many have been there for generations and are related to one another. The area does not have cell phone service, and many of the homes are in poor condition. There are an excessive quantity of ticks, and swarms of flying insects regularly harass anyone standing outside. This is not the type of place that is visited frequently by outsiders. There really isn't anything of interest in Lansdowne. Their tourism numbers are probably abysmal. The terrain surrounding the modular home where Lily and Jack lived is very inhospitable. The vegetation is thick, the ground is uneven, and there are many trees which were knocked down due to a recent storm. It's hard to imagine that a 6-year-old girl and a 4-year-old boy could have made it too far under those conditions. This brings me to item number 3. There are really only 2 theories about what could have happened to Lily and Jack Sullivan. Theory number 1 is that they wandered into the surrounding heavily wooded area and somehow disappeared from the face of the planet. Theory number 2 is that foul play was involved. Someone took the children. This could be a relative, a friend, or a stranger. Because there are only 2 theories, if one theory is true, the other theory must be false. With this in mind, let's take a look at the evidence both for and against the idea that theory number 1 is true. The children wandered into the woods and no one else was involved. I will start with the factors that support this theory. Based on the statements made by the children's mother, Malaya, and the man who identified himself as the children's stepfather, Daniel, it seems as though Lily and Jack simply walked away from the family home. There were no indications of a kidnapping. For example, Malaya and Daniel did not mention anyone in the area, they did not hear a vehicle, they did not hear anyone screaming, and there was no physical evidence supporting a kidnapping. Whatever happened, it was silent, which is inconsistent with an abduction. The authorities indicated there was no evidence of foul play, which of course only leaves wandering away as an explanation. It seems unlikely that an aspiring kidnapper would have randomly stumbled upon the children in such a rural area. If the kidnapper was a stranger and intended to take the children, how would they have even known about the children in order to target them? Kidnapping by a stranger in a rural area in Canada is pretty much unheard of. It is technically possible, but statistically extremely unlikely. A kidnapping perpetrated by someone who knew the children would be more likely, like a family member or friend, but this is still a low probability event. Now moving to the factors that contradict the theory that the children wandered away. The authorities almost certainly searched every area the children could have realistically reached on foot, yet they found nothing. Maybe one of the children could have hidden effectively, but what are the chances that both children would have been able to conceal themselves from trained search personnel? What motive would the children have for leaving their home on foot? The children's mother indicated they were not the type of kids to go outside alone. It is extremely unusual for children to venture into the wilderness. So one moment they were playing, and the next moment they decided to walk away from their home. It just doesn't make any sense. While it is unlikely they wandered off, it is even more unlikely they left the home with some type of purpose. At 6 and 4 years of age, they did not run away, like their mission wasn't to start new lives with fabricated identities. After Lily and Jack went missing, their mother left the area and blocked Daniel on social media. Did she blame Daniel for something? There's no way to know for certain, but it looks suspicious. Lily and Jack went missing on Friday, May 2, 2025, but had not been in school since Tuesday. The school was closed on Wednesday, but they were also kept home on Thursday and Friday, supposedly due to Lily being sick with a cough. If Lily was sick, why would she venture outside? Either way, it seems suspicious that the children would disappear after missing school. It points to this idea that Lily and Jack were missing for a few days prior to when they were reported missing. Was everyone in this situation really telling the truth? When considering all the evidence in this case, do I believe the children wandered off? Is Theory 1 the most probable explanation? In my opinion, no. Theory 1, while certainly not impossible, does not strike me as the most probable explanation. The idea that 2 small children, one of them reportedly sick, ventured alone into dense, inhospitable, insect-infested woods, leaving no trace of their journey even after a large-scale search, is incredibly difficult to believe. This only leaves theory number 2. Foul play was involved. This theory doesn't necessitate a stranger's involvement, but perhaps someone familiar with the children was involved, like a family member or a friend. Both theories, the children wandering off or the children being abducted, are statistically unlikely, but one of them must be true. When weighing the relative probabilities involved, I believe that theory number 2 is a better fit to the data. It would not surprise me if the police were looking closely at people familiar with Lily and Jack Sullivan. They have suggested that the children are lost somewhere in the woods, but perhaps the real answer is not buried in the forest. Rather, it's a little closer to home. Those are my thoughts on the case of Lily and Jack Sullivan. Thank you so much for watching. I'll talk to you soon. One concept that comes up quite a bit when dealing with mysterious disappearances is the idea of relative probabilities. I talked about that a little bit in this case. For children to go missing under these circumstances, like we see in the case of Lily and Jack Sullivan, this is extremely unlikely. This is what's called a low probability event. So if someone were to look across a wide geographic area with a lot of population, they would not see this happening hardly ever. So just the fact that it occurred is an unlikely event actually happening, right? So it's important to start the analysis by acknowledging that something unlikely did happen. Whatever the explanation, something very unlikely actually did occur. So when looking at what could be the explanation for the event, it's important to consider that yes, all of the explanations are low probability, but because the event actually occurred, you have to use relative probabilities. So I'll use an example here that's somewhat similar to the case that I covered of Lily and Jack Sullivan. Let's say we're just looking at one child who went missing, and we know that this is a low probability event. We know it's unlikely that a child will go missing. And we start to look at the possible explanations, and we come up with two theories. One involves no foul play. The child wandered off on his own and just disappeared. The other theory involves there was foul play. Someone, no one knows who, but someone took the child. Now, the idea that there's no foul play is low probability, but so is the idea that there is foul play. Both are low probability, but we have to consider the relative probabilities because the event occurred. The child is actually missing. So say that we do the math and we compute that the chance of no foul play is 40%, and the chance of foul play is 60%. Well, 60% is more likely. That's just how the math works. So that is the likely explanation, even though it is low probability. Again, you have to use the probabilities that are available in the frame. It doesn't make any sense to treat the event as if it never occurred. Something unusual occurred. Now we have to deal with the explanations which are available. Over the years, covering true crime cases, I've seen a lot of prosecutors and defense attorneys who don't seem to understand the idea of relative probabilities. They talk about events using terms as if the event never occurred. So they might say, well, there's only a 1 in a million chance of this or a 1 in a billion chance of that. But that's not really the case when the number of possible explanations has been narrowed and, again, the event actually occurred. So it's an area that's very challenging sometimes, I think, for people to understand. And I think when people are arguing back and forth about it and debating what could have happened, it's important to keep in mind that the only thing that matters is how likely an explanation is as compared to the other explanations. That's what matters once a child has already gone missing or any low probability event has already occurred. Now, specifically looking at the case of Lily and Jack Sullivan, it's important to keep in mind when evaluating the likelihood of an explanation, how many steps are necessary to complete any particular event. For example, when looking at the wandering off theory, a few things had to happen. There are some coincidences there. So the children had to silently exit out of a sliding glass door. That's pretty unlikely. So that event by itself, that action by itself, would not normally happen, right? Usually when children leave a residence, they make noise. They might say something, they might be screaming or yelling, they might be talking to each other, they might bang into stuff, they might bang the door. There's some type of commotion that goes along with that. To do so silently almost makes it seem like they had intent, which is extremely unlikely. like they were sneaking out at the ages of 6 and 4. So that event, that action, is low probability. Now, once they're in the backyard, as I mentioned, there was this dilapidated fence around the modular home's backyard. Wasn't in good shape. It looks like it would be pretty easy to defeat for someone of any age. But still, I imagine that on prior occasions, those children had played in the backyard. They were accustomed to the idea that the backyard was their domain. They were not to leave the backyard. They may have viewed those woods as scary and inhospitable, which would be an accurate way to think about them. Yet, here we see another unlikely event, unlikely action. They somehow move through the fence. Now, again, I don't think that would be physically difficult, but I think that there would be a barrier as far as their thinking and maybe their emotions, like fear. So they open a gate or climb under the fence or climb over the fence or whatever they did. And now they have to make another decision. So there was some area around the backyard outside the fence. This was like a wide open area surrounded by woods. The fence really wasn't that large. There was a lot of space between the fence and the woods. So they could have stayed there. They could have stayed there and wandered around the outside of the fence, maybe gone to the front of the modular home, maybe walked over to the broken down RV or whatever that was, maybe walked out to the street. That wouldn't be safe, but they could have done that. Instead, again, under theory number 1, they decided to walk into the woods. This is rough terrain. It would be hard to navigate, especially at their ages, again, 6 and 4 years old. They're not physically strong. They're not tall. They'd have trouble reaching their legs over the different obstructions like branches on the ground and all that. It just seems really unusual they would decide to move into that wooded area. And then, even if they did, to go in beyond, say, 5 or 10 feet, or even 50 feet, to go way in, to go so far in that over 160 rescue personnel could not find them. That just seems really unlikely. Like, that's another event that is low probability. So we have exiting out of the sliding door, deciding to exit the backyard, then moving from the area around the backyard into the woods, and then deciding to go into the woods so far they can't be found. So when doing the math and kind of looking at the total probability through the lens of the different steps, it's clear that this is something that really should not have happened. Like, it puts it in a new perspective to think about all the steps. Now, when thinking about the other theory, theory number 2, I mean, that's just the decision of somebody to commit a crime. That happens all the time. There would not necessarily be a lot of low probability actions that had to conspire for that to occur. It could have just been one person deciding they were going to do something awful. That's it. So when looking at it that way, I think that that provides even more justification for this idea that theory number 2 is the more likely explanation. I don't know what happened. It could have been either theory. It could have been some theory that I didn't cover, right? It could have been aliens coming down from outer space. I don't know. I don't know what happened. But when just looking at the 2 theories I've been working with, theory number 2 has a stronger position in terms of likelihood, in my opinion. So this is a case where I think it'll be interesting to see what the police find. What do they know now that they're not sharing, if anything? What will they find in the future? What will the explanation be? Clearly, this case has a bad outcome either way. It doesn't look too good for Lily and Jack Sullivan, but it would bring some peace to have an explanation, to know what happened to them on May 2, 2025. Was it theory number 1? Was it theory number 2? Was it some other theory I didn't cover? It's important that society find an explanation. So I hope the investigators have success as they pursue the truth.